All right, we will go ahead and get started, everyone. Welcome. My name is Anthony McAdoo. I'm Executive Director of the WKU Alumni Association. Today's webinar is part of a three-part series in partnership with the Alumni Association, Ogden College of Science and Engineering, and the Gordon Ford College of Business. Today's topics are working across generations, and as a reminder, it is being recorded and live streamed. So to help get our speaker introduced today, I'd like to ask Monica Duvall to do the honors.
Awesome, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm Monica Duvall. I'm the internship coordinator and the peak coordinator for the Gordon Ford College of Business, and I have the honor of introducing Melissa Wallace, who is going to speak to us first. So Melissa is currently the Director for Team Member Experience at American Airlines. Melissa is an accomplished human resources leader with responsibility for managing a team of HR professionals in the area of team member relations, work environment investigations, and ADA accommodations for all domestic team members. She has a lot of responsibility. With more than 33 years of experience in HR, Melissa has held leadership roles in policy and administration, leadership development, HR compliance, field human resources, labor relations, and talent acquisition. A Kentucky native, Melissa earned her Bachelor of Arts degree in Public Relations from Western Kentucky University, and she currently serves on the WKU Alumni Diversity and Inclusion Council. So thank you so much for joining us this morning, Melissa, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Monica. Thank you all. It is an honor to be a part of this three-part series, so thank you for letting me join. We are going to be talking about generations in the workplace today, so just keep in mind for framework today, it's all those people born and living at about the same time, kind of regarded collectively, and I'll keep referring back to generations and the importance of this element and this dimension in our workplaces today. I'm going to spend some time talking to you about 5 full generations that are really coexisting globally, as well as in many of the workplaces that you may have already experienced and you certainly will be experiencing ongoing. I'm going to focus first on who we are at American Airlines and why this is so important to us. We'll spend some time looking at each generation as a collective, and then we'll talk about generations and you in the workplace. I'll wrap up and we have some time for Q&A. So first and foremost, I don't think it would be a presentation for me for American Airlines if I didn't do this. I think you're expecting it, right? This is your captain speaking. I hope everybody is on board and relaxed and getting ready for this very brief 30-minute flight today that we have to talk about generations. So let's get ready for takeoff. We are really glad that you're here today. Thanks for joining us. So I want to give you a little bit of insight into who we are as American Airlines. This is our why. This is our purpose, our sole purpose in this business, and first and foremost for American Airlines is to care for people on life's journey. And I would just ask that you think about that for just a second, because most of you, if not all of you, have gotten on an airplane probably recently, at least in the past few years. You're on a journey, right? When you step foot on our planes, there is a purpose for you being there. And for many people, that's exciting, right? It could be personal, it could be professional, it could be something so personally devastating. And from a life experience standpoint, it could be something elating for you, a place you're going, an event you're going to. But ultimately, everybody's on a journey that comes to see us at American Airlines. And it's so important that we then think about one of our corporate key objectives is to make culture a competitive advantage. So one of the ways that we're living our why and caring for everybody on life's journey is making certain we're creating an environment that is diverse, equitable, and inclusive. We're fostering a workplace that actually values and respects the differences, these different life experiences and perspectives that all of our team members and our customers are bringing into the workplace every day. And I would have been remiss had I not included this piece, because an important element into making any company a competitive advantage, and certainly in our business, to make our culture a competitive advantage, is to focus on our commitment to DE&I. Every day, all of our team members show up at work and they have a choice to make in terms of making this an inclusive place for their coworkers as well as for our customers. So we do that by making certain that we're recruiting and retaining diverse talent, that we're supporting our team members in the workplace by having 20 employee business resource groups across our system globally as well as nationally, that we give fair and impartial consideration to all of our suppliers. It's not something you think about often, but in the business like an airline, we have so many third-party suppliers that supply us with products and services. It's important that we are looking and considering diverse suppliers. And then finally, making certain that diversity, equity, and inclusion, we're driving excellence in those areas. And one of the ways that we do that is what you see on the left-hand side of this page. We have a number of national and international partnerships that we value so much. And these partners actually are well known for their benchmarking and their assessments that they do for employers across the United States and across the world. You see in the center there that 2021 Best Places to Work from the Human Rights Campaign, and that's based on our 100% score on the Corporate Equality Index. This is how we measure ourselves as a good corporate employer, knowing who we are in the space of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And certainly when we're talking about generations today, that is an element that's so important for us to consider, making certain that we have these voices from all of these generations and that we're supporting those voices. So we're going to look a little bit more at our history and how this plays a role in our history. If you look at the very top, 1926 and 1930, sounds like a long time ago, it is. Our birth year was 1926. American Airways was born with its first flight from St. Louis to Chicago by Charles Lindbergh. He carried the U.S. mail in 1926 on that flight. And in 1930, we actually carried our first passengers on a flight nationally here in the United States. In 1939, American Airlines began trading on the New York Stock Exchange, and in 1945, we had our first transatlantic flight. In 1957, we established the first stewardess college in the world. I'll let you dwell on that for just a second, and then I'll encourage you not to ever use that term again aside from hearing this presentation. They do know themselves as flight attendants today, but it was the Stewardess College, or as we call it internally, the Charm Farm, and it was established in 1957. We, in a normal, non-pandemic year, so I'm going to harken you back to the end of 2019, the beginning of 2020. Things were very business as usual in the legacy airline industry. We have 6,700 departures a day in a very normal year. 350 destinations in capturing those 6,700 flights. 500,000 customers per day coming through our doors and boarding on our aircraft. That's 200 million passengers per year, going to 50 countries. Today, we have 82,300 active team members that are working with our customers and bringing the airline business back to what it was pre-pandemic. And we are seeing that demand roaring back at this point in time. Spring break was a good time for the airlines these past few weeks. So we have a little over 30,000 team members that are on voluntary programs right now, waiting to return to the workplace and serve you as our customers. So that puts us a little over 100,000 in the main line, plus our regional wholly owned carriers that I'm sure you're familiar with, like Envoy, PSA, and Piedmont. We have over 130,000 team members that are here to serve our customers daily. 85% of our team members are unionized. They are covered by a labor contract, and 15% are non-represented. These are primarily our management and professional roles and our support staff roles. And then we have over 20 divisions at American Airlines that are supporting making certain that our business is here for our customers every day, and that these experiences are wonderful experiences for our customers as well as our team members. That includes things like the cargo department, the people department, IT, finance, marketing planning, network planning, and revenue management, our technical operations team and our customer care team, our reservations team, just to name a few of the divisions that we have out there that are here to support all of our customers daily. I'm going to drill down into population for a second as we start to think about generations. This is the world, it says World Pop Clock. This is the World Population Clock. Hopefully some of you have seen this before. It's on the U.S. Census Bureau site. If you have not, I encourage you to go there, and I've included the link in this deck so that you can. It's amazing to actually watch it. It's pretty phenomenal because those dials are moving constantly. We're going to focus on the left-hand side of the page specifically, and you'll see on the left-hand side of the page there is one birth every 9 seconds in the United States. There's one death every 11 seconds. An international migrant comes to the United States every 666 seconds, and we have a net gain of a person every 40 seconds in the United States. This is pretty phenomenal when you think about it. And you start to understand how this begins to impact the generational representation that we have in the United States, and also how it's represented in our companies. So I'll drill down into that so that you can see that as well. Population by generation. This is a 2020 population in the United States on the left-hand side. So I'll draw your attention. There are 5 generations represented here, technically 6, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But you'll see that the greatest or silent generation represents 8% of the U.S. population. And it moves on around to the boomers, the Gen Xers, the millennials and Gen Ys, and the Gen Zs. And there's a pretty equalized representation in the United States with these categories. You'll see in the lower left-hand corner, I've given you a little guide for what those generational groups are from birth year standpoint. On the left-hand side, on the right-hand side of the page, you will now see this is the American Airlines team member population representation by generation. And you will see some differences here, right? 43% of our population are considered boomers. 32% are Gen Xers, 23% millennials and Gen Y, and it shouldn't be a surprise that only 1.5% are Gen Zs. This is the population that really is just coming into the workforce, have been here for the past couple of years, in their early and mid-20s. This is you getting ready to go into the workforce, right? And we have 0.5% of our population that is actually the greatest or silent generation. That equates to 184 of our team members fall into this generational category. Very importantly, what I want you to see here is that American Airlines, we have 5 very full generations represented in our team member population. This is very similar to what you're going to see in the legacy airline industry specifically. And when I say legacy airline, there are 3 air carriers that are the oldest legacy carriers, U.S. international carriers, and that is American Airlines, Delta, and United. You would see that our populations look very, very similar. And here's why. Our team members come to work at American and they stay quite frequently. I know my bio said 33 years. Actually, it was off just a little bit. I celebrated my 35th anniversary with American in December of last year. I fall very much into kind of the average for American. So if you look at this, 28,585 of our team members are somewhere between their first year and their 10th year of being with American. You've got 12,000 team members between 11 and 20 years. You've got 20,400 team members between 21 and 30 years. And there's that average me, right? There's almost 20,000 of us with 31 to 40 years of service. We've got 1,214 team members that are between 41 and 50 years of service. And we have 85 team members out there that have 50 or more years of service with us. So this is an industry, not just American. This is an industry where oftentimes people come to this industry, and like me, I went out of Western Kentucky University's doorway and I went to American Airlines as a flight attendant, by the way. I started there saying, I'm going to work here for a little while and figure out what I want to do in life. And what I found very quickly was there's so many opportunities within the airline itself that I was able to grow my career right here. And 35 years later, this is where I am. I don't want you to be off-put by the gender representation chart, but I wanted to be honest and transparent with you about this is us as a total population. We have 37% of our population is female and 63% of our population is male. Please know that we use governmental standards. There is no standard for capturing non-binary with our capture today and what we have to report out on. So I want you to understand that. The other thing I want you to understand is this is total population. This includes all of our non-management represented groups and our management professionals. Many of our non-management and represented groups, there are some very heavily male-dominated work groups within the airline industry. So when you look at pilots, when you look at mechanics, you will see that there are still some pretty heavily male-dominated roles out there. And these are large groups. So that is one of the things that drives that gender representation factor. So that is us in terms of who we are as an airline from a demographic around generation and tenure specifically. I want to get to this place of talking a little bit more about what we see generation to be. And I'm going to use this iceberg analogy. I'm sure many of you have seen this before. If not, I encourage you to really look at it. And then this is the question I want you to ask. As you walk into any room, if you're on a virtual call, meeting, webinar, I want you to ask yourself this question: who is in the room? And this is the picture that I want to come to your mind when you're asking that question. Because as you think about an iceberg, you all know there are a lot of things that you can see and know about above the waterline, but there are far more things below the waterline that we don't know about, right? That we don't see. It's not obvious to us. So let's talk about above the waterline really quickly. You know some things about me already, right? Mainly because Monica shared my bio, but if you think about just seeing me on this camera and listening to me, you've heard me speaking the English language, probably with this Southern accent that you've interpreted. By looking at me, you probably have assumed I'm a female from a gender representation standpoint. You can see part of me on camera, so you can see the color of my skin, and you may have guessed what race I may be. You see my behaviors, and based on how I present and how I interact with you all today, you're going to make a judgment about my style and my communication ability. But then you also see on that far left-hand side of the page, right, generation. So you may have guessed my age. Certainly you know how many years I've been with the company, and you start to know these things about people, and you're assuming things about people. So you probably guessed my generation as well. And when you know a person's generation, you likely have enough information about a generation to know some things about style, preferences, and beliefs that you have about that generation, where they're coming from and what their expectations are. What you're starting to do is assume and perceive things that are below the waterline for folks. This is you, right? I want you to overlay yourself on this picture of the iceberg. There are things that people see and know about you that are above the waterline every day. When you walk into a room, when you're talking with somebody, right? It's what they see, how you behave, the color of your skin. They're guessing a lot of things about you that may not be reality. And what I want you to think about, especially from a generational standpoint, don't box someone in because you think you may know some of these things about them. But there's so many elements and layers of diversity within each and every one of us that goes beyond generation, that we all need to think about this and ask this question: who's in the room? And then don't allow your own assumptions about that individual, don't allow others' assumptions about you to make a determination about how something is about to take place, how a meeting is run, where your thoughts are around something. Here's an important thing to always remember about who's in the room. There are similarities, you'll figure those out. There are absolutely always differences. Many of them are not obvious. Think about below the waterline. In fact, they're not seen. Often they're not controllable. So the parents that I was born to, the place that I was born, the country that I was born into, the language that I speak today, that was not controllable by me initially, right? There's some things that I have in my control today that can change some, but I didn't control all of that. But all of those differences and those similarities are always going to be in the room. So remember, always ask this question and then start to appreciate all of those differences that may be in the room that you can call on. So let's get a little deeper and talk about these generations. I found this wonderful infographic from McCrindle, and this is, again, the link is in the package that I am sharing with Monica, Liz, and Anthony for any of you that want to get a copy of this presentation today. I found this infographic to be the most revealing and really the best around all the generations that are out there, and now they've included the 6th generation. So let's look at these really quickly. Builders, these are also called that silent generation, right? The traditionalists or the greatest generation. And I will tell you, in my research around generations, I have found there's no real one aspect for nomenclature around generations. I have found that individuals have coined the generations. Organizations like the Pew Institute has coined these generations, but they've stuck based on their great depiction of that generation. So what the McCrindle infographic does for you, though, is it gives you a lot of really fun stats. When these folks were born, their age. So look at the builders, the silent or greatest generation. They are 74 plus years of age. Their social markers, what has influenced and shaped their life socially? And what you see here is for this greatest generation, World War II actually shaped their lives and impacted their lives. You'll see fun things like iconic cars and toys and music devices of the generation. But what I really want us to focus on in this presentation is that leadership style information at the bottom. And it's really a telling piece of information, but it's not the end all be all. So don't let yourself walk away from here saying, well, this generation is only going to be the leadership style of controlling. That is absolutely not the case. It is the case that it may be their preferential style, right? It's my default style. It's where I come from and how I learned and my background and my experience, but it doesn't mean that I can't flex. And I want you all to keep that in mind for every generation and then keep it in mind for yourself. So leadership style for a greatest or silent generation individual is more of a controlling style. They are more control and demand. This is how they were brought up, how they were raised, how they came into the professional world. Ideal leaders for them are commanders. They like that idea of having someone who is in control that tells them exactly what they want them to do, when they want them to do it, how they want it to be done. Learning style is far more formal for this group. This is a group that certainly likes paper. They like a book to look at. They like to be in a classroom and be able to talk through something and read through it, most importantly. Influence and advice. They like getting influence and advice from officials. We'll talk about how that's different from some of the others. Monica, can I do a quick check? It looks like something's trying to connect. Can you all still hear me?
Yes, I can still hear you, but we lost your presentation. Liz, do you want to pop that presentation up?
Yes, I'll pop it up. Let me get to.
And Melissa, it looks like you got muted in the process.
All right, unmuted again?
Yep, you are unmuted now, and Liz is getting the presentation back up.
Thank you very much, Liz. I really appreciate that. Okay, if you'll go to that, the builders.
Give me 2 seconds. I've got too many screens open myself.
No worries. My apologies, all. The pleasures of internet connectivity in a home remote environment.
That's what I was looking for.
Okay. Now, let me do a double check. Did everyone get to hear what I was saying about leadership style for this greatest and silent generation? Liz or Monica, can you confirm for me?
Yes, I think that they heard pretty much all of it. You did cut out towards the end.
Okay, so I'll go back down to the leadership style. This is a very important part of this infographic from McCrindle. And you see that from a leadership style, this group, I want to make certain that I make the point that this is a generalized preferential style, right? Doesn't mean that I can't flex in and out of this style. It means that this is what I'm drawn to. From a leadership style, I am drawn as a silent or greatest generation to this controlling style. It's control and command. From an ideal leader, I like a commander. I like somebody who's in charge, who's going to tell me how and when to do something, what's expected of me. And a learning style, it's far more of a formal instructional style. We like books and we like materials that we can get our hands on. Influence and advice. This generation really likes advice from officials. And then from a marketing standpoint, more print marketing. This is more of the newspaper generation that still likes to get their news that way. If you'll go to that next, just tab once. We'll go to the next generation. Absolutely. Here's our baby boomers, 55 to 73 years old. This generation was really impacted and shaped by the moon landing in 1969. You'll see the fun things about cars, toys, and devices. I'm not going to focus on that. That's fun for everybody to look at, but look at the style. This is more of a directive style. Boomer leaders do like to engage with teams, but they are still more directing and want to guide people in their style. Ideal leaders for them are thinkers. They like structure. They like the idea that we're very thoughtful in process and orientation. Influence and advice, they appreciate that from experts, while maybe not officials, actual experts. And then from a marketing standpoint, this is far more of the broadcast generation, radio and TV from a marketing standpoint. If you'll go to that next generation, Gen X. Gen X are 40 to 54 years old. Their lives have been formed and impacted by the stock market crash of 1987. From a leadership style, Gen Xers are more coordinating. So they are the central leader, but they are cognizant of the fact that you have to coordinate with multiple parties. Gen Xers are also like later baby boomers, actually. Gen Xers are this generation of people that are quick to jump in. They're doers. So although they may be leading in a group, they're not bashful about jumping in and doing part of the work. Their learning style is participative. So versus a structured or formal style, from a learning style, Gen Xers do appreciate that opportunity to be in a group setting and have a little bit of group think and conversation, participate. They will participate. Not always easy for some of them, but they will participate. Influence and advice comes from practitioners, people that have done the work, that have advice and counsel to give based on experience and background, etc. Marketing, direct. Targeted marketing is more of what has shaped this generation and more their preference. And we'll go to the next generation. Now we're talking about Gen Y. These are 25 to 39-year-olds whose lives were absolutely shaped by 9/11, so September 11th of 2001. This generation's leadership style is definitely one of guiding. They are leaders, but they want to guide. They do not want to direct. They don't want to actually tell you where to go and how to get there. They want to guide you and let you find that on your own. They like supportive leaders, people that they're feeling like they have their back. Interactive learning styles, or even more than the Gen Xers, they'll participate. They want to go beyond participation, though. They want to interact with people around learning. Influence and advice comes from peers often for this group, and their marketing preferences have definitely moved to online and more of a linked social preference. The next generation, I think you all will be very familiar with. These are our Gen Zs. This is actually both of my children. Their lives have been very much formed and shaped by the global financial crisis in 2008. And when you think about that, our lives have been shaped that way because their parents and their caretakers' lives were shaped by that, and their jobs may have been impacted or changed immensely because of that. From a leadership style, they are a very empowering group. They want to empower people to do things and do not feel like they need to hold over people to make certain that they're accountable and responsible. Their ideal leaders are truly collaborators. Multi-model from a learning standpoint. They like interaction, they like participation, they like virtual learning. So this multi-model for learning, from an influence and advice standpoint, they love influence and advice that comes from forums. That can be peer-to-peer forums, in-person, virtual forums, but it's a forum of individuals that are talking about how things really work in life. And then their marketing, of course, is coming from this digital and social world. And now we're going to talk about the last generation that hasn't been talked about very much, and that's why I love this McCrindle model. This is what's being coined as Gen Alpha. These are people that are under 10 years of age. So you're talking about studies that have been done with very young students in school that are showing, of course, what's shaped them socially. They have come into being in the Trump and Brexit era. So their life is definitely being shaped by politics and socioeconomic things, probably like none of us have been shaped before. From a leadership style, their style is an inspiring style. So these groups, this generation of under 10-year-olds are all about inspiring each other. Right? Being a leader that inspires others to inspire others, being a co-creator. It's a very innovative, tactical, creative generation. And then learning style, hey, they have been virtual since the day that they were born, basically. Chatbot is the way they get influenced and advised. And then you'll see that from a marketing standpoint, it's just real time. Whatever the situation may be, is what is influencing them from a marketing standpoint. So one more click, Liz, and that will just put it all together. So that's what you all will see on the deck itself. Again, a great infographic around generations. If we'll move on to the next page, I want to start giving you just some advice with regard to your life in consideration of generations, and you can click to that next screen. So be proactive. See beyond your own generational lens. And I'm going to use some words in here that absolutely have, just a standard meaning, but be intentionally inclusive, right? If you look around in a room or in a virtual room and you don't see that all generations are being represented there, and it's important, right? If your organization has them all, why are they not all in the room? And what can we glean by having them there? So do that pause, right? Be intentionally inclusive and make certain that you're including others, different backgrounds, experiences, and generations. So go to the next bullet point. And you can pop all these in and I'll talk to them. Be appreciatively inquisitive. Every single one of you on this call today, on this webinar today, knows that how you do say and ask something really is so much more meaningful than what you're asking. So be thoughtful in the questions that you're asking, but be appreciatively inquisitive. Ask genuine questions. If you don't know something about someone's generation, if you're inquisitive about that, if they may not know about yours, figure out how to inquire genuinely about it, and people will open up far more easily when you do that. Be informed. Conduct your own research. Around cultures, religions, gender identities, races, and definitely around generations. And I've included some information on resources in the back of this deck to help you with regard to those resources on generations. Be respectful and seek to understand. And I would say this needs to be reciprocal for you. Seek to understand others, respect them for who they are and the perspectives that they bring. Demand no less for yourself, but always do it with that appreciative, genuine nature. And then as you interact with each other, your peers in class, your coworkers and customers in the business world, be mindful and ask yourself these questions. Am I showing this person that they are valued? Am I treating this person the way they want to be treated? That's the platinum rule, right? And am I helping the customer, the coworker, my peer feel a sense of belonging in the working world as a welcomed guest, whatever that looks like in terms of who I'm serving? The next page, I want to just share some practical examples with you, and I'll ask that you pop all these bullet points in.
Melissa, we're on about just giving you like 5-minute warning.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you.
I want to pop all these bullet points in, allow for new at work, allow for flexibility of thought and approach, give new ideas a chance, engage as a reverse mentor. And what I mean by that is I am really hopeful that if you don't already have a mentor in a workplace as an intern, you'll have a mentor. Most likely your mentor will be a different generation. Encourage them to allow you to be a reverse mentor, because I have done that with some of the team members that I have, and it's an amazing experience to start to really learn from a different perspective and a different generation. Watch for your own unconscious bias and stereotypes. Think about that iceberg theory, and then figure out how to politely check people if you see a bias and stereotype coming into conversations, meetings, etc. Intentionally collaborate across generations. And then fully understand your own preferences and know how to communicate them. Know how to verbalize that for yourself so that your leader understands who you are in this space and you can start to understand who they are. I want to get through these next couple of slides, and I'm going to come back to Hannah and Sarah because it's really important that I share those two stories with you. So if you'll go to the next slide. In conclusion, this is really important for you to remember. You are unique. You bring so many special talents, experiences, and perspectives to the role that you're in right now, the role that you're about to take on in your professional life, to help deliver a world-class experience to whomever you are going to serve. Do not forget that, and figure out how to bring that authentically into the workplace, and then appreciate others. When we do this well as organizations, as teams, we have so many things to gain, and I'll let you read through that. The last bullet on this page, I will leave you with this. If you'll click one more time, should be one more thing to fly in. Oh, sorry about that. We can go up one slide. Whether you're a customer or a team member, every single one of us deserves to have this great experience of being respected, valued, and included wherever we are. So now if you'll go to the next page, shameless advertisement. We have a lot to offer at American Airlines. Jobs.aa.com is a great friend for you if you want to see what journeys may await you. There's a lot to explore out there. These two women that you see on this page have both been with American for a long time, and they have excelled in their career to be a vice president in technology and a managing director in customer care. Their stories are on jobs.aa.com along with many others. I've put our links in here for all of our social platforms for you to get to know us a little bit better. And then I encourage you to go to aa.com newsroom, because the newsroom is going to give you a lot of great information about what we're doing to commit to health and safety, to cleanliness, and to welcoming you back to your airline experience when you're ready to travel again. So please go there and enjoy that. This last page that's next, if you will go to that slide. Again, these are just the resources that I've provided in this deck. So if you'll go to that next slide, it does say Q&A. Before I open for Q&A, I wanted to tell you about Hannah and Sarah, just very quickly. So these are two experiences that I've had with having Gen Z team members on my team. Hannah came to my inclusion and diversity team a few years ago, and I had that team for 10 years. I was very intentional about making certain that that team was incredibly diverse from a gender perspective, from a disability perspective, from a race and ethnicity perspective, and an age perspective. But one thing I did not have on that team was this Gen Z person. And Hannah came into my life from the finance department. She was on the MBA track, and she actually made a conscious decision to get off that track because she had a desire and a passion around inclusion and diversity. And as a very young 20-something in the workplace, she was also figuring out herself and being an out individual in a professional environment. What I subsequently found out after Hannah came to work for me that was so exciting for me was Hannah went to high school with my two kids. She was a little younger than my son and a little older than my daughter. And what her frame of reference and perspective brought to our team was invaluable. So I say this to you because this other person that I have on my team, Sarah, today, she came to my team member experience team, actually on the ADA team. Sarah is a marketing MBA. She came to work for American as a coordinator because she knows there's career opportunities there. Sarah is this person that pushes me. She puts meetings on my calendar to make certain that we're checking in on her progress and her priorities. She checks in with me to make certain that she is meeting my expectations, and we look at her projects. She comes to me, just as Hannah did, to say, I see an issue, but here's the key, and this is what I want you to take away. As an individual that will be very keen on understanding what issues and problems there may be in an organization where there is opportunity for change, you're going to know that, you're going to see it, and you're going to want to bring it to your leaders and your peers. This is what you need to do always, though, and this is what Hannah and Sarah are so phenomenal at. They never come to me with a problem or an issue that they haven't very much thought through and have considered solutions, and they bring that to me as well. It could be a package, a deck that they want to share with me about the solution. It could be an email that says, here are some options for you. But these two young women are such a great representation of Gen Z and that injection of why that generation is so important in our workplace and why it's so important in American as we look at these 5 full generations in the workplace today. So I want to thank you for your time and attention today. I was so excited to get to join you. If you do have questions for me, I'm happy to entertain any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Melissa. Does anybody have any questions for Melissa or even thoughts on, I love that generation slide. I think that was right on what I'm seeing and what employers are telling us that they're seeing, but any thoughts from the students out there on the generation slide? Oh, Grant, go right ahead. You can unmute yourself if you want.
Hey, Melissa. I think you can hear me now.
Yeah.
So
Yes, Grant, I can hear you.
the question I have is, what would you suggest to someone, probably in the Gen Z era, so someone who's looking more for a collaborative work style or environment, but they're working with an older generation type that's more directive or commanding? How would you suggest they interact if those two kind of conflict with each other?
Grant, I'm not certain what organization you're actually working in or looking at right now. Some of that, obviously, it makes a difference in the organization and just how the organization is structured, the department or division that you're working into. But most importantly for you, I would say, start by really getting to know your leader. One of the things that I will say again, Sarah and Hannah were phenomenal at doing was putting time on my calendar. And for a generation that is more directive, that can sometimes feel a little off-putting, right? You're taking time out of my schedule. But I just need you to know, as a leader personally, my style is I needed to understand why that time was important for them. So when they put time on my calendar, it gave them an opportunity to talk to me about what they're seeing in the workplace, where they're seeing challenges in the workplace, and how they can actually make a difference. And I think getting to know your leader is really critical, because if your leader can start to understand you and your style and your need for collaboration, then your leader can become a little bit more responsible about making certain that that's happening with the team. Create forums if you have the opportunity. If you're working on a project, create a forum that drives collaboration, right? Especially if you have the opportunity to be like a facilitator of a forum. Create the forum that drives collaboration so that people are starting to experience it. Because if you're in an organization or you're on a team that really hasn't been very collaborative previously, it's a little bit more command and control or directive, and you go and you do and you're held accountable for meeting X, Y, and Z. It could be that just the team has not experienced the opportunity for real collaboration. So I would encourage you to take advantage of the opportunities that you have. If you're leading a conversation, make certain that you're driving it as a collaborative conversation. And then you're kind of injecting that opportunity for people to see what it actually means to, have a collaborative conversation with folks and get ideas that they wouldn't have normally thought of by having this team collaboration. Hope that helps. What other questions do you have?
Any other questions?
I would say this: if you can't think of anything right now and you look at this presentation and you think of something and you want to send those questions over to Monica or Liz or Anthony, you are welcome to do that. The other thing I will tell you, and this was not something that was disclosed in that bio, so I appreciate that, but I'll disclose it myself. After almost 35 and a half years with American Airlines, I am retiring from American next Wednesday. So at the end of March, I will be a retiree of American Airlines with many other people. I'm in good company. This company has been my life. It is near and dear to my heart. The team members are amazing, and most everybody that you talk with at American, if they say anything about what's so important to them at this company, it's always going to be the people. So what I will say to you is, while my address is an AA.com address today, it won't be for very much longer. So I would tell you, if you want to send me an email directly, you're certainly welcome to do that. My new email address will be melissa.s.wallace@outlook.com. It is currently at AA.com, but it will be at outlook.com. I wanted to make that pretty simple for folks. So if you think of a question, if you want to just connect, from a professional standpoint, I'm very willing and open to do that. And so appreciative as an alumni of Western Kentucky University that I got to do this today with you all. So thanks so much.
Well, we appreciate it. Sorry, Monica, go ahead. If you we're stepping on each other now.
Go ahead.
Well, congratulations on your retirement and a wonderful career for you at American Airlines. And thank you for taking the time to talk to our students today. We are very grateful for your time. And we just wish you all the best in retirement and whatever that means for you and your family. So, well, we're going to try
I get to spend more time with you all on the I&D committee now.
Yes,
Western, so
we look
I'm
forward.
very appreciative of that too.
I'll be calling you up to participate in some some things. So we'll keep you busy.
Thank you. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. We're going to switch gears. We actually have the team from General Motors joining us from the Corvette plant. And so we have several. So I'm going to do some introductions. And so this is really just a panel discussion. We're going to kind of ask them some questions, but feel free to pop questions into the chat as well. Or if you have a question, you can raise your hand, because we're really kind of trying to take what Melissa has talked about as a multi-generational workforce. And we're looking at kind of a real life experience with GM. And so with us today, do I still have all the individuals that you sent me, Rachel?
I think so. I haven't seen one pop on yet.
Okay.
Preston, I'm not sure if he's on.
Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and introduce the individuals we have with us today, and then we'll just get into the discussion. We have John Andrews with us today. He is the Plant Launch Operations Manager. He has a degree from Missouri University of Science and Technology in mechanical engineering, and he has been with General Motors for 24 years, and he began as a summer intern. We have Rachel Bagshaw. She is the communication manager. She's a 2016 WKU alumni. She has degrees in chemistry and science and math education. She worked as an intern for GM while in college, left to pursue teaching, and found her way back to GM. We have Eric Farmer, who is Human Resources and Labor Relations Director. He is 27 years with GM, 2 years here at Bowling Green Assembly. He has a degree in journalism and a minor in business from Central Michigan University, a master's degree in science of administration from Central Michigan. He began career in GM as a customer service representative, but has held jobs in manufacturing and HR as well. We have Preston Hardison. He is the engineering change coordinator, WKU alumni. He has a Bachelor of Science in Finance and a Master's in Business Administration. We have Yolanda Hackman, who is the Quality Verification Group Leader, graduate of Western Michigan University, degree in Industrial Engineering and minor in Supply Chain, and originally from the Dominican Republic. So we have quite the diverse group with us today. Various majors, various spots in their career. So we're going to really just kind of get started here. So the question I'm going to pose to our panel is, what were your biggest obstacles you encountered when entering the workforce? And I'm not sure who wants to get started with that, but I'm gonna, John, it looks like you're unmuted, so we'll go from there.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can.
Oh, good. I wasn't sure yet. Okay, we've been hopping today. So I started, like you said, as an intern. It was in Kansas City, and probably it was just intimidating. I think as a student coming into a large manufacturing plant for the first time, and not something that I was familiar with. That many people, we had over 1,000 people per shift. And here I was, at that time, a junior in college. It was fairly intimidating, thinking, do I really know what I need to in this environment? And I think listening to people and asking a lot of questions was a lot of making that initial transition and just trying to learn as much as I could.
Awesome. And does anybody else from the team have anything? You all can keep yourselves unmuted. I feel like as long as y'all aren't in the same room, we'll be okay. But if you're in the same room, that might become an issue.
There's only 2 of us in the same room that I know of, and we'll try to do it right.
Does anybody else have any thoughts on their biggest obstacles when you encountered or when you entered the workforce? Rachel?
Yeah, it looks like Yolanda is unmuted. So
Oh, Yolanda, I'm sorry. I didn't see you there. Oh, I can't hear you. You're unmuted. Oh, no. We love technology, right? Technology's great. I still can't hear her.
Wonder if her speaker's turned off on her computer.
Yeah, computer might be off, but while she's working on that, I'll jump in and try to answer that question. I mean, for me, it was just trying to make up my mind what I really wanted to do. I entered the workforce. I came out with a journalism degree. Thought I was going to be some public relations consultant to big time politicians or sports teams or something like that. So took a job at the YMCA of Flint, Michigan, doing public relations there. Then realized that just didn't pay a lot of money. So so then it was like, well, what do I got to do to sustain myself and eat? And then make a decision. So I think the main thing is being honest with yourself. What is it that you really have a passion about? What do you really want to do? And then what do you think is going to take to sustain yourself? Or how can you be fiscally responsible to yourself and to your parents and all of this stuff? Because ideally, if your mom was like my mom was, they kind of want you more out the house than in the house at 19. And well, 18, 19, they give you a pass. But when you hit 21, 22, 23, they're like, isn't it time for you to go? So I didn't, and I wanted to be out of the house too. So the biggest challenge for me was figuring out what it was that I really wanted to do. I had this degree, but does it really fit with what I'm going to do to make me the most amount of money that I really want to make and things of that nature. So, but again, also, like John was saying, it does get a little intimidating because you're fresh out of school and now you're dealing with grown men and women that have grown men and women problems too in life. So you're just this kid trying to make money or whatever you're trying to do, but now you got to be aware of how do you fit in organizationally and how you do your job without really stepping on the toes of others that you need to as you go along. So
perfect.
Hopefully I stalled enough for Miss Hackman.
Can we hear you? No. Oh no.
Can you hear me now?
We've got you.
I'm sorry, I had to go back. I was doing audio via my computer and I don't know what happened. For the first question that you had related to the biggest obstacle when entering the workforce, to me was understanding what my manager wanted from me, meaning the job's responsibility, and being bold, asking exactly what I needed to do on a daily basis. So for everybody to understand, even when you change jobs, sometimes it's not very clear what your job responsibility needs to be, and asking those questions is very, very important. It is hard at the same time because I think the manager from American Airlines, what she was saying was understanding your manager is going to help you a lot. And if you haven't built the relationship yet with your manager, it might make it like a little uncomfortable, not knowing how to ask the right questions. But just make sure that you have that good relationship with your manager so you can ask questions. So no one comes around and says, hey, you need to create this report when you didn't know it was your responsibility.
Perfect. That's great. So I guess the next question, I think, unless there's somebody else has a thought, John, you unmuted. Do you have a thought or do you want me to move on?
I came off mute because we do see Preston on too.
Oh, is Preston here?
Yeah. Just so you know.
That's perfect. Hey, Preston, do you have, what are your biggest obstacles you encountered when entering the workforce? Do you have any thoughts on that? Uh-oh. Do we have another situation?
Maybe.
He was unmuted earlier, but now he's muted. So maybe he got a phone call or something.
All right.
He's on the phone. I sent him a chat too to let him know that he's muted.
That's all right. We can go on and we can come back to him.
Yeah, we'll come back to Preston. So what do you see as the biggest obstacles new grads encounter when they enter the workforce? Anybody want to take that one? I can unmute whoever I need to unmute.
I think sometimes the biggest thing is expectations. I think everybody thinks, okay, I walked out of Western Kentucky University on Thursday and I should land this six-figure job on next Wednesday, you know, so that reality might not necessarily play out that way, so to speak, right? So first thing is, what are your realistic expectations of what does your career map look like? You know, what do you think you want to be? And maybe you have to chunk it down to 1 to 3 years, 3 to 5, 5 to 10, or 5 to 7, 7 to 10. And understand that that can change. I mean, it can go in a wide range of activities or different experiences. And one thing, though, too, is even though we've come out with this great degree and we think we're smart and we're the best thing since sliced bread, also take the time to understand that people are in jobs before you that you can learn from. And if you listen, I think I had a boss one time that told me you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So, and there's a correlation there. You got 2 things to listen, you know, 1 to talk. So when you listen, you can learn and then process that stuff in your head. And then you can probably speak a little bit better about things that you want to talk about in the workforce. Or as you're formulating your plan, you see that Liz Fogel does this over here. And I kind of like that. But I also kind of like what John Andrews is doing too. And maybe there's something in between that. And maybe my degree is not 100% right there, but I got those skills. Or you go and work on those skills to make yourself more marketable down the road. So great to have high expectations, but also you need to chunk them down into what's realistic or what you can grab and at the appropriate intervals. And like Yolanda kind of said too, be bold though. If there's something that, especially early on in your career, if there's an opportunity that looks like it's exciting, be bold enough to at least explore it. You know, don't get comfortable when you don't need to be.
That's all great advice. I love that our students hear things that Monica and I tell them, but then they get to hear them from someone else, and maybe it'll stick a little more, because sometimes just hearing it from another perspective there of obstacles as they encounter. Does anybody else have any advice on biggest obstacles new grads encounter?
Liz, I'll jump in. I think it goes back to what Eric said, maybe for the first question too, is there's a lot of pressure based on whatever your degree is. So, for me specifically, I felt a lot of pressure because I had this teaching degree that I had to go and I had to teach, and then I didn't like it. And it was like, okay, well, have I just wasted 4 years of my life, or can I pivot and transition to something different? And so I think there's exterior pressure, there's internal pressure. It's like it's a mental weight, I think, once you graduate, to know what is the next step. And so for GM specifically, like, they don't limit you based on those things. And I think that's what's great. Now we're seeing, you went from a generation where you didn't have to have a degree to get into the workforce. Then you had to have a degree to get in the workforce. And now I think there's a lot more focus on skill set. What do you bring? What are you passionate about? What are you really good at? And maybe that doesn't always correlate with exactly what you went to school for. So I'd say just because you are on a certain path now doesn't mean that you're stuck there. And maybe you love it and you know exactly what you want to do. But for me, my brain wasn't fully developed when I graduated, and that's science in itself. And so most people don't truly know, and I think that's okay. So don't put so much pressure on yourself. You can try different things, and you're gonna go around to different jobs, and you'll find exactly where you fit. It just may take a little bit of time.
Perfect.
Yeah, and I think, kind of building on both Eric and on Rachel, another thing a piece of advice I got, and this is way back as an intern, riding around in cars with our repair driver that was moving cars I was trying to get repaired from bay to bay for me. And one day he says, when you graduate, don't be one of those engineers when something doesn't go right that says, well, it works on paper, so it can't be what I came up with, meaning not everything is going to go just perfect, right? So what we're looking for as employers and as coworkers, as bosses, as subordinates, is people that when something doesn't go right, now what happens? What do you do in that moment to go learn, rebound, recover, and go again? And I think that's really important thing to learn, and it can be hard to learn. A lot of times we have to work with people to understand they don't necessarily know everything yet. You've learned a lot of theory, but our employees that have been with us for 30 years on the same job have a whole lot of knowledge on those tasks that none of the rest of us can have. And so learning how to approach those people, how to build rapport, and then use that to help solve the problems it's so big. It's a huge benefit to you as an individual, and then the whole team does a whole lot better as well.
Yeah, great advice. Do we know if Preston is able to chime in or no? Do we know yet? I'll just keep asking. Oh,
am I here now?
You're here.
Okay, that's my first time using Zoom, so forgive me.
All right, you want to add to that question?
Yeah, so my biggest obstacle was lifestyle change. So by the time you graduate, you'll have been in school 17 years and used to the routine of classes and being around people your age. And then you enter the workforce, all that goes out the window. Your routine, lifestyle, people you're around, that completely changes. And I think the topic of this multi-generational workforce, that is very important to understand once you enter the workforce.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to throw you for a loop. We have a question in the chat box that y'all don't have. So what advice would you give the 21-year-old version of yourself when it comes to future work experience? So what advice would you give yourself?
Ooh, I came off mute to say, Preston. And Preston talked about lifestyle change. He's amongst our newest employees here. And when he hired in as a student, he was working in my organization, and we partnered you with somebody at the other end of their career, right? So
That is correct.
you probably got some of that advice.
A lot of that advice. They paired me with a guy who started with GM back in 1967. So, yeah, quite a age difference there. He started with GM 30 years before I was born. So, learning, like, he passed down his knowledge to me and all of his experiences and what makes a good employee and how to be successful. And I think that really helped in my development.
What a perfect person to answer that. The one that's just new on the team, right?
Yep.
One right there, just out of school. All right. So how does your company promote and encourage working effectively across a multi-generational workforce and across departments? And I think this is a great example maybe Preston gave with the pairing with the older, individual. But, can you all provide some specifics how GM kind of works through that?
Yeah, I'll come off mute and I'll talk to this one. So I think across the board, you have to work with lots of other segments of the corporation. So we work specifically in manufacturing, and in manufacturing, you have to pair with different groups in order to get a task complete. And so for me, it's very important, those relationships, right? Because I'm a one-man team here. I don't have, a group that I go tell what to do. So I have to personally have these different relationships with all of the different organizations, and they've got diversity within them, right? And you've got to know, I think for me, the most important thing is learning, and like Eric said earlier, listening, because I also came in as not necessarily a member of management, but I work with the top leaders in management every single day. And so that's difficult. I'm one of 2 females on that management team, right? So in the minority there, I'm the youngest one on that team as well. And so it's being quiet, taking everything in, observing, knowing when to speak, when to be bold. And then in the same regard, I don't have a background in communications. So it's like, I've just got to make sure that I'm learning from everyone else. I think that's another thing, you asked that question, which is like obstacles and challenges. And it's about knowing kind of where you are and where you want to go. And not necessarily thinking that you have to know everything either, right? So it's very common that I don't know an answer to a question. It's okay to say that, even if you're young, you know what I mean? People expect that. They don't expect you to know it all, but you feel like you've got something to prove. But I think it's having a little bit of vulnerability as well, and knowing that it's okay if I don't know this. I just need to go learn about it. Somebody asked me a question I don't know. Let me go find out.
I think that's very true. I understand coming into a workforce where I don't have a background in engineering, have a background in broadcasting, and having to work through those things and understand. So asking good questions and learning. I have learned so much in my time here. And Monica, I saw you unmute. I'm sure you can speak to this as well.
Well, I think I loved what she said about asking questions, because I think that sometimes, whether it's a new employee or whether it is a college graduate that's the youngest one coming in, they don't always want to ask those questions because they feel like they should know the answers. And so they feel like they're going to disappoint someone because they have to ask that question. And that is not the case at all. I learned when I went in as a marketing director, I had lots of questions because I was way too young to be in the position that I was in. And the only reason that I was successful in that is because I did ask questions, and I was constantly learning. I was still asking questions when I left 8.5 years later. So asking questions and having those conversations is okay. It doesn't make you look like you're not smart enough or anything. They want you to ask those questions. Now, are there some questions that you probably should work through and try to figure out the answer on your own first? Yes, but figuring out, kind of finding that happy medium balance of what questions should you find out on your own and what questions should you ask, is one of the best pieces of advice that I could give anyone going into an industry, whether they're coming straight out of college or whether they have experience but going into a different industry. I did the same thing when I came into higher education. It was a whole new world compared to corporate, that's for sure. So I still ask questions here too.
Yeah, very much so. All right, so this is one of these burning questions that we get a lot from, I get a lot from students, and it is, do you have any tips, sorry, make sure that didn't ring up on my computer. Do you have any tips or tricks to help someone lead or supervise someone that is older than them?
Hello. I'm gonna share my personal experience being as a group leader on the floor. You're always gonna be supervising people that have 30 plus years of experience than you. And a couple of things with that is respect. It is very important to gain that respect from your employees. At the same time, expectations, right? Just like when you're in college, your professors have expectation on the syllabus what to do. It's the same thing with you. You have to have expectation and draw a line. Make your employees understand this is my personality. I'm big on safety, so we're gonna make sure that everybody follows the PPE. And if someone doesn't follow it, this is what we're gonna do. So pretty much laying out who you are so they can understand eventually if something happens, and also expectation. It's very expectation and respect, making sure that you're treating people with respect so they respect you back. And at the same time, drawing that line. It is very important. And always take a step back. If someone is just talking or someone is very aggressive, take a step back, and then just come back and not get to that person's level at that point. Just take some time, and it's gonna get there.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think that's great advice from Yolanda. And Yolanda is a group leader, like she said, on our production floor. And so she's describing a lot of what that environment is like, which might be quite foreign to students. Like I said, in our first round of questions, coming into a manufacturing facility with this many people, it is quite different from what you've seen for 17 years of schooling. And so we often, to help people learn the business, we often have them in those group leader positions or even some of their other positions. So not just what Yolanda's talking about with leading those people. At the same time, when you're working through a problem, realizing all the wisdom that is there in that group of people and making sure that you're asking their opinions, their thoughts on how to solve a particular issue. That will help with the respect piece that Yolanda's talking about. It becomes mutual at that point, and now you've got a team that's working hard to help you get where you want to go, because you're going to find once you've earned that respect, people will want to see you succeed. They know that's what is going on, and it can be pretty powerful for you.
Yeah. All great advice. Anybody else have anything they want to add? Otherwise, I'll get to my next question.
Did you see the newest question in the chat box, Liz? It's a really good question.
Oh, okay. We'll go. I know Eric unmuted you. Did you want to speak to that? You can, and that's fine. And before I move on to the next question, or I'll ask this one. All right. He said, go on. Okay. What are some of the best qualities of trait a new employer or intern can have that an experienced employee notices? And that kind of ties into that last question I was going to ask, even if you want to go so far as what advice would you give, joining a multi-generational workforce?
Liz, I'm going to hop in and I will let John or Eric, who have more experience than I do, correct me if I'm wrong. But I think that the best qualities or traits are work ethic and just key behaviors. And I think that those take you further than any sort of knowledge that you bring to the table. Because if you don't have that knowledge, if you've got the work ethic, you're going to figure stuff out. And then at GM, we kind of preach these key behaviors around thinking customer and being innovative and one team. And those things, if you showcase those behaviors that we try to live by, then that's something that's noticed across the board. That comes through in every single interaction that you have. It comes through in all the work that you produce. And so I think those two things, work ethic and key behaviors, will take you further and will get you noticed faster than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, to piggyback on that, just be prepared. I mean, whatever you got to do, be prepared. If you got to do a presentation, be prepared. Having that level of preparedness helps you be more confident, and then you can portray that, or you'll at least look that way when you're in front of people, either making a presentation or just doing your day-to-day work. So. People make mistakes. Don't worry about that, but, if it looks like you're trying to, as Rachel says, operate with a high gear and a high motor, and that you're working on the things that you need to work on, the rest will fall into place for you as you go along in your career.
I would say that adaptability and open-mindedness is very important when entering the workforce. When I started here in July of 2019, on top of launching a new vehicle, we went through a month-long strike in the middle of the launch, and then we had to face all the new challenges that came along with COVID as well. So all that happened within my first year here at GM. Adaptability was and will continue to be critical to success, whether it's an intern or a new graduate entering the workforce. Building on that, always go the extra mile. There were several times that I came in as an intern during second shift, and even a couple Saturdays to provide support to help with completion and various tasks, unpaid. So don't be afraid to go the extra mile and be adaptable, because chances are you'll get noticed with that. Another thing, open-mindedness is key. When you're entering the multi-generational workforce, you'll come across many new people and experiences, and you have to come in with an open mindset, because everyone has their own unique way of doing things. As Mike Somerville, that John was talking about earlier, that they paired me with, he always told me it takes all kinds of people to build automobiles. And I think you'll find that it takes all kinds of people, no matter your field or your place of work. It takes all kinds of people to get the job done.
And then all of these things are great. Don't forget the basics. You show up late a few times in the very beginning, then it's very hard to overcome that. You show up in something you've pulled out of a balled up pile of clothes a couple of times, even though we're not supposed to have that be a primary consideration. That's a part of the brand image for yourself you're building right then, right? So I think all of this is great advice. You come in on time, you work hard, and when you run out of a task, which more than likely will happen at first, because we're still feeling out how fast you can process stuff, and you're asking for more and not just found waiting for somebody to bring something to you, we're going to remember. When we walk by and it doesn't look like you're busy or you're late and this is not important to you during the day, we're going to remember in the other direction. So I think that's probably what I've just covered is the icing on the cake, and then those other pieces are the fundamentals, right? But those little things will get you in a trap in a hurry if you're not careful.
All great advice, all of it. Does anybody have any other questions for our panel? We want to be good stewards of their time. I know they've had a busy morning.
And Liz, Preston's answer kind of flows into our next presentation on April the 9th. It's appreciating the skill sets of others. So his response totally like goes right into that, and how you not just work across generations, but you work across skill sets and people at different levels as well. So that was really good answer, Preston.
So that's our plug for our one on April 9th. So you can all join us back here on April 9th for that one. Does anybody have any other questions while we have our panel, or does any of our panel have any kind of final thoughts they want to leave with our students? I think everybody's getting hungry and ready to go to lunch. Is that what it is?
Yeah, no, this has been fun. Appreciate the opportunity. So, thanks a lot.
Well, we appreciate you guys. General Motors has always been a longtime supporter of Western Kentucky University. I know they're one of my industrial partners, and I know they hire lots of students from the Gordon Ford College of Business, as well as the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences. And so we're very thankful for your continued partnership. Thank you for taking the time just to even share your wisdom with us and being part of the panel today. And hopefully we'll have another opportunity in the future to have you all involved with future things.
Absolutely. Thanks. And, you know, Rachel, and I know you said it, Rachel and Preston are both Western grads as well. We've got several throughout the organization that have come through Western and then been a big part of what we're doing over here on this side of town. So certainly a relationship that I think we both benefit a lot from. So thank you.
Well, thank you. That was very nice of you guys, and we appreciate you all so much. And thank you to all of our students for joining us today and hanging with us today, and with Melissa's presentation, as well as the panel from General Motors. So thank you guys so much.
All right.